Terrific, thank you. So I will then call the meeting of the planning board to order. This is Tuesday, November 17th at 7:30. This meeting is being held over Zoom. It's virtual. We have members of the public here, and the meeting is being recorded. All the planning board members are here, myself, Ann Weeks, the chair, Virginia Rogers, the vice chair, Dan Pasquarello, Peter Clay, and David Anderson. In attendance from the public, I'm going to ask when people speak to identify themselves and, if necessary, spell their name. We also are, and I'm grateful for this, meeting first with the water superintendent and water commissioner and representative from the Ipswich River Watershed Association. So I'm hoping that we can have a conversation. The board is interested in understanding, particularly new members, but also those of us who've been on for a while, understanding what the water supply situation is in Wenham, what the restrictions are, and what our future outlook might be with respect to water resources and the impact on future development. So with that, I think I should turn it over to either Ernest Ashley or Eric Mansfield, whichever of you would like to just kick us off.
Thank you, Ann. This is Ernest, and I will start only to say that the planning board provided some questions specifically to the water department, and I would like Eric, who has prepared some answers, which I have reviewed, to go ahead and go through those questions and provide the information. I think that will be the most expeditious way through it. And then we'll be open to a discussion and additional questions thereafter. Eric?
Thank you, Ernest.
Well, thank you, Ernest. And thanks for inviting us into your meeting. The first question I was a little bit confused about: how does Wenham Water work? So I didn't really have a specific answer for that. If I'm not sure who answered that, who asked that question, if there was more to that.
I think I'm not sure who wrote the questions down, but I think that the gist of the board's question was just to develop an understanding of where Wenham's water comes from, and
Okay.
the constraints on it during the summer on use, and where those constraints arise from, and just what our future outlook is. So
okay, so
Wenham's water works.
Eric, Eric, if I could, and I'll have the one spot, because Eric can definitely speak to how the system works, and I will speak as the hydrogeologist by profession and current employment, that basically Wenham's water comes from a confined aquifer, meaning a large area of sand and gravel which has a protective or somewhat low permeability clay on top of it. We extract our water from wells. The water is replenished by the about 33 inches of rain that we get a year in Massachusetts, sometimes more, sometimes less. The aquifer probably extends from Wenham Lake all the way to the Ipswich River. And we have two wells that are in the vicinity of Pleasant Pond. As you go towards Pleasant Pond, there is a curve and they are off to the lower right. And so Eric maintains the system that withdraws that water. And again, it is kind of, I think I put it in writing one time, it is a extremely sustainable resource until it's not. Meaning that if we overuse it or we have severe droughts, we will have significant challenges with water. But Eric, let me have you go ahead with the questions that were asked. Thank you for that opportunity.
Okay, so the second question I had was, is there any data on what residential activities drive the most use, i.e. watering lawns, swimming pools, household use? And So when we compare water use during the summer and winter, it's clear that outdoor water use is the biggest issue. In a home that uses 15 to 20,000 gallons a quarter during the winter may use up to 300,000 gallons a quarter in the summertime, and that's mostly due to, I would say, irrigation. I don't know if there's any questions on, if you want to stop and ask questions on each question.
It's hard to understand those volumes without understanding what the total capacity of the system is. I don't know if that's the right way to
Okay,
put
well,
it, but
that's actually answered in further questions.
Yeah, why don't
okay,
you run through?
great. Might be that they're out of order for a good understanding, but I appreciate that.
Yeah. So I'm just answering them as they came in order. So I mean, if there was any questions on each of these, you know, I don't know if anyone wants to answer, ask them now.
Why don't you run through most of them, Eric? Because I think it flows pretty well. They were good questions, all.
All right. And so the second question was, can you explain where our water comes from and what restrictions there are on our ability to draw down that water? So we have two 24-inch gravel packed wells located on Pleasant Street. One is about 80 feet deep, and the other is about 60 feet deep. And both the wells draw from the Ipswich River Basin, which is limited capacity. That amount is divided up between 14 other communities. So we've been given by Mass DEP a registered withdrawal limit of 105.85 million gallons per year that we can withdraw, with an additional buffer of 36.5 million gallons. And that gives us a maximum withdrawal limit of 142.35 million gallons per year. And third question was, what is the town's relationship with Ipswich River Watershed Association? We try to keep on good terms with the Ipswich River Watershed Association, and we've worked on grants and other projects with them, other conservation projects. And I think that they are generally happy with our efforts to reduce the amount of water pumped, although I'm not sure they would always be, I mean, they're always going to be looking for every community to do better in the basin. But we've worked with them, and we've worked with them on projects to make sure that we could try to get to, I know the Maple Woods project is there, you know, I mean, we work with them on that, and it looks like they're like a zero or negative zero impact on the water system. And part of that other question was, do they put limits on what we can do? And the Ipswich Water does not regulate our water, but they do lobby and they pressure Mass DEP to impose restrictions on us and the other communities too. And the next question was, what is our present capacity for supplying water to residents there? And there are really two different parts to this answer. The amount of actual water and our ability to pump it from the ground to the residents is not where we're limited at all. We have sufficient capacity. And as I said before, we're limited by Mass DEP to 142.35 million gallons a year. And then it says our water ban's unavoidable. And I said, no, I don't think they should be avoided at all. Actually, we need to encourage more residents to get away from lush green lawns by promoting greenscapes. Greenscapes are gardens and landscapes cultivated using environmentally friendly landscaping, gardening practices. Greenscapes conserve water and avoid using pesticides, herbicides, synthetic fertilizers, while also producing healthy lawns and plants with deep root systems. We would encourage that always. So the next questions are you concerned about the amount of development we are seeing in Wenham Pines, Spring Hill, etc.? Yeah, so in regards to Wenham Pines, they will not be using any town water for irrigation. That was part of their agreement. They're utilizing the existing well on the property. So even with the 22 units, the whole development will most likely use less than 1 million gallons a year. And that was high. I had them around probably 780, 800,000 gallons per year. with an over 55 community. I am concerned with the Spring Hill development because there was no restriction on using town water for irrigation. And we've already seen water use from 100 to 200,000 gallons a quarter during this summer as houses came online. So if all 17 homes there were to use an average of 300,000 gallons during the 2 summer quarters, you're looking at just under 6 million gallons in water use per year for 17 units compared to under 1 million for 22 units. So that development alone limits 5 future developments of the same size, just by allowing them to use town water for irrigation. And so the next question was, would you like to see any restraints put on building or development in town? And my answer is the water department is not in the position to impose development restrictions, but we do need to focus on working with current residents to limit outdoor and indoor water use, and work with the planning board to limit new development from using public water supply for non-essential outdoor water use. And we're getting down to the end. So I have these 2 questions are kind of the same. The second to last 2 questions. And are there any activities you would like to prohibit, or are there any land use regulations that you would like to impose? So, I mean, we would like to see any activity that could potentially contaminate the wells. But those activities should be covered in the stormwater bylaw and also the aquifer protection bylaw. And then the final question are there any plans for developing new well fields? And the answer to that is no. And it says, is it feasible? And there is no need for it. And it would not change the amount of water we were allowed to withdraw. So we could put in 10 wells, but it would not change the amount that Mass DEP would allow us to withdraw from the ground. And that was the end of the questions.
Let me jump
Eric,
in there
thank
just
you.
for a second. Thank you,
Okay,
Eric.
go ahead.
In that there were a couple of items that I think you brought out. And the biggest one was, communicating the restrictions that the water department would like to have, because we are all in the same bucket. But I think he described the Wenham Pines development, which had a well from the golf course and is not pulling irrigation water from the town system, and the Spring Hill development where there was a communication error and they did not get a water restriction on their use. So they are connected with irrigation to the town water. Now, could encourage them to drill a well. Yes, it's coming out of the same bucket, but it is not exactly coming out of our allotment. And so we will certainly do everything we can to encourage restrictions, or rather conservation. But in terms of restrictions, I think it's something that we can coordinate with the planning board in terms of what we will require of any additional development in terms of use of town water for irrigation. Thank you.
Yeah, that's great, Ernest. Thank you so much. And thank you, Eric. And I have a follow-up question to that very point, which is maybe we can have a little conversation either now or at some point about what is it that the planning board could do to work with you better so that we can avoid future situations like that. I think we have the ability to talk to the developers about, irrigation and trying to minimize town water usage, understanding these restrictions. And I'm just wondering where you feel like we could do better to avoid situations like that in the future.
But I spoke with Margaret, and we had talked about the possibility of trying to get a bylaw to restrict to limit all irrigation on new developments. So, but that we really didn't make it in for this last town meeting, obviously with everything going on. So it's something that's still, we can talk about in the future, trying to get that through.
Well, I can't speak for the entire board, but I would be real happy to work with you guys on any of that. And I think the rest of the board agrees that we're happy to be cooperative on these issues so that it's possible to do the growth or have the growth that we expect to have and still be mindful of the limited resource that we have. And one of the other questions that I think initially came out, and I don't know, it didn't make it precisely onto the list, was, can you tell us about the impact of the drought this summer? I think one of the original impetus for this was we were in a pretty severe drought, it seemed, here this summer, and we're just wondering, are we out of that now? Do you forecast more of the same going forward? And does that change anything about how you view the sustainability of kind of where we are with respect to water supply?
So the state did increase drop the level of the drought. So we are back to I don't remember the level now off the top of my head. But it's as the beginning of the year, we had a real high use going into June, and once we started doing more public education, I handed out probably 73 warning letters to residents for irrigation use. It really, we saw a dramatic drop in water use, and I think for the most part, people are willing to comply. And then when the state starts declaring a drought, and then you see it on TV, you see it in the news, water use then decreases even more when they see it in the from the public, when it's that right on TV.
And Anne, I would add that it sounds like there's two avenues to pursue. One would be the coordination between the planning board and the water commission, just in terms of making sure that we communicate what restrictions we want on any future development for use of town water for irrigation. And then the other, Eric mentioned, if we did a bylaw, that would require a vote at town meeting. And so two very different tracks.
Excuse me, Anne, if I could.
Sure, Margaret.
I just wanted to let Eric and Ernest know that we will be starting our review of all of our regulations early next year. And the water department will be a big part of that review. We're looking at all of our regulations, subdivision rules and regulations, as well as zoning bylaws under the eye of, climate adaptability and sustainability. So the water commission will be a big part of this review.
Yes, and one of the questions that I had just posed was, when you look out at the future outlook, do you see more of summers of drought in our future, or was this an anomaly?
Well, I couldn't really speak to that. But as far as what we have available to us, we haven't seen anything that's significant drop in what we can produce.
But we will, because of seasonal restrictions, we are required to put a water ban on when we see the Ipswich River drop below a specific level. It's 52.5 cubic feet a second. But what happens is, at that point, we will have water bans. So we have signs that are green that say mandatory water conservation. It's a term of art, basically, to say, please, everybody, comply with the bylaws and conserve water. But then when we drop below that level, we are mandated to put on a water ban. And so if you're asking if there's anything we can do to prevent water bans, I suggest the answer is no, because once the Ipswich River drops below that, we will have water bans.
Yeah, no, that wasn't my suggestion. It might have been someone else's, but
no,
I'm more interested in trying to think about, what are the potential future ramifications of the supply we have in a warming climate. Because I think that's what Margaret is thinking about when she's thinking about reviewing, and what we're all thinking about when we think about reviewing bylaws against, for sustainability.
So I guess
I wonder if any of the other board members have questions
please.
for Eric
I do.
or Ernest.
I have a question. Ernest, just following up on your last point, is the ban mandated by DEP? Is that where the mandate comes from?
Yes, thanks, and that's correct. So it's kind of, there's a disconnect. We are able to provide water. We don't want to have too much use so that we would exceed a mandated allowable amount that we can withdraw per year. But the water ban is instituted once the river level goes below a certain point. So whether we can provide you with the water is not as much relevant as where is that river water level, and then we have a water ban.
So my other question, I don't know if this is for Eric or not, with respect to the annual cap, where do we usually come in as far as annual usage?
We've been close to up against it a couple of years. Back in the early 90s or mid 90s is when they really, the water use was out of control here and they were over it. But we've actually, we were working with the with 5 other communities in the basin on a grant a couple years ago, and it's amazing how much actually with the water use has come down even over the years. I mean, you would think with all the development, the water use would be going up, and it's actually be coming down with the all the technology and everything else. So I mean, it's definitely a tightrope for us. I mean, we want to encourage people to develop, but we also want to stay within our limits. You have developments like Spring Hill where they're gonna, where they could use up, what 5 developments could use. I mean, that really is not, that's not what we would encourage.
Yeah, and Eric, maybe you want to talk.
Could you give us just a point of reference? So, say for last year.
Yeah, that's a great, Eric.
And Mark, would you just identify yourself when you begin?
Oh, sorry, Mark Lippard, part of the
recording.
Water Board. But if Eric, you want to talk about the warnings you gave this year? I think it was 75, 80 warnings when the rate was, we were bumping up against that.
Yeah. So in June, we pumped over 16 million gallons just in June, which is I haven't seen it since I've been here, and I've been here since 2008. So I was really aggressive with going to people's mailboxes, putting warnings on their mailboxes, identifying the fact that we are in a water ban, that we have water restrictions. And we did get that number to significantly drop, and we've had it dropping ever since. So I think, that was a good thing. And, if we can kind of rein in the people who need the green lawns, I think it will be a benefit to the whole town.
I'm also wondering if I could just, I'm sorry, Mrs. Rogers, let me just ask one question really quickly before I forget. And that is, you gave us an awful lot of wonderful statistics at the beginning of your presentation, Eric. And I wonder, are those written down somewhere that we could just have them for reference?
Yep, they are, and I will forward them off to Margaret.
Excellent, thank you. And now, Ms. Rogers, sorry.
Yes, of course. I've been on the planning board for a long time, and while we talk about this pretty regularly when we have new construction, and I wonder how could we put some more teeth into? Can we actually put it into a subdivision without a bylaw? That is, could we make this requirement that they not use town water without ending up with being sued for that? So unless we have a bylaw, could we actually do that? And
yeah, we did it with Middlewoods, and we also did it with Wenham Pines.
Okay, but
and was the tool there a condition on the permit? Is that?
Yeah, it was, because the suggestion, the comments came from the water department, and then they were implemented through you.
And I think that was the true of Spring Hill, but it didn't get through.
It was we kind of got Spring Hill happened in the middle of a transition, and it was something that just kind of got lost, unfortunately. And I talked to developers about if you want to have other developments like this in town, you really it would be in their best interest to go the route of irrigation wells, and they weren't willing to comply with that.
It doesn't surprise me. But the second thing is then when it's still a voluntary ban, and that is compliance is voluntary. There's no teeth in that whatsoever. So that they had the same request, and you said that they actually this summer they reduced the usage somewhat during the ban. But if you live in some of the neighborhoods like I do, William Fairfield Drive, there's not great compliance, and people just they want to water their lawns. They'll do it at night.
Yeah, and we have what we call the conservation ban rate, which is double, which we added a couple of years ago, which is double our highest rate before that. And we have residents, and not a lot of them, but we have residents that pay upwards of $5,000-6,000 for 3 months worth of water just so they can have a green lawn.
Bless us.
But it is not an equitable situation. And you mentioned that it is voluntary. No, actually, the ban is a legal requirement, and we do have tickets. And as Eric mentioned, our plan is to continue to issue a warning, an information letter, and then a warning. And then we have tickets that are a first amount and then an additional amount per day of additional water. But the problem is to hand out an actual ticket, Eric needs to observe the watering when it occurs. And sometimes, or more often than not, that's at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Yes.
Okay, well, do other members of the board have questions for Eric and/or Ernest?
Hey, and Mark Lippard, just one
Or
more
Mark?
question. Yeah, do you have, do you guys have any developments coming online over the next 6 to 12 months, or any proposals that the water board should be aware of?
Nothing that I know about. Margaret, have you been speaking to anyone planning a large development in Wenham?
No, I haven't heard of any large developments going in yet. Nothing on my radar yet.
We've had a number of, splitting of existing lots, but nothing on the order of a Spring Hill or a Wenham Pines.
No, in the Maple Woods projects, I mean, they've been great to work with. They've worked with the Ipswich River Watershed Association the whole time. And I mean, they've developed, net negative water use on our system.
I have a couple of questions. Or Virginia, you want to go first?
I just wanted to make a suggestion that I think that one needs to talk to real estate salespeople in the area, because I had an experience with a neighbor who was told by his real estate agent how he could get around the ban by watering it, turning sprinklers on at night. And I think that, it needs to be a community effort that people know when they purchase property that they're expected to obey be good community members.
Thank you, Jenny. That would be a good thing for the water department to have as an information packet for real estate agents to be able to say, this is how you will comply and be a good community member.
Right.
I think that's helpful.
I had a couple with Dave Anderson. One is not as cheeky as it sounds. Why don't Beverly have water banned? They use the water named after us. Why don't they have one?
Okay, I'll start off saying I didn't sell them the rights to Wenham Lake. That was not in my thing, but it is a sore point. If you lived on Cherry Street, or rather, yeah, I think one goes right into Beverly in the same neighborhood and something. So anyway, the Beverly Salem Water Board owns Putnamville Reservoir, Longwood Reservoir, and Wenham Lake Reservoir. And so they are on a reservoir system, being able to legally take water during surplus periods between December and May and fill those reservoirs. And we are on a groundwater system, which continues to take water out of the Ipswich River during the summers. And that's why the Ipswich River is our trigger for when we have to impose a water ban. We have, and you're asked a question of our coordination with Ipswich River Watershed Association. We have certainly talked to Salem Beverly Water Supply or Mass DEP. And we don't get much traction with Salem Beverly because they basically sell the water and keep the systems running as a result of that. You do see what Wenham Lake being refilled in the latter part of the year, because then they are going to fill up the Putnamville Reservoir. So it's really how they operate their system, and it is kind of different. Mass DEP would love to have them be a little bit more compliant with what water restrictions we see. But again, they do not have a permit for withdrawal. So we, with Ipswich River Watershed Association and Mass DEP, it's pretty different once it crosses that town line.
Okay,
And-
thanks. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, and Eric, keep me honest here. Beverly is our backup, so we do have to walk gingerly in our
That's-
opinions with them.
Yeah, if
Thanks,
we ever
Eric.
we do have an interconnection
Yeah.
with Beverly, so if we do need water from them, we need to keep a good relationship with them.
Have
All
we
right.
ever done that? Have we ever taken water from that
Well-
supply?
No, we haven't.
But like Parsons Hill is on Beverly,
Yes,
right? So,
Gordon College, Parsons Hill.
right.
Oh, that was my next question is, does Gordon College use Beverly or Wenham Water? And you've answered it.
Yeah, anything east of Gusset Road, Charles Davis Gusset, is served by Beverly Water Supply, and Beverly Sewer generally.
All right. We won't set up the checkpoints on the border just yet.
All right, thank you.
And another question. So, quick question on developments. Do you track water usage for developments like Spring Hill by community or by residents?
Everything's done by resident.
Okay. When we look at the array of residential usage across the town, and if we were to look at the top, say 10% of residences by use, would that be, what kind of residence is that? Is that a residence in a development, or is it a single parcel, so to speak?
Well, I mean,
We have 11 parcels that go above our conservation rate. Eric, isn't that correct? And they're
we have
distributed
we have
across
about
town.
30. I think we have about 30 customers out of 1,180 that generally are above 75,000 gallons per quarter during the summer. And yes, I mean, when you look at Settlers Lane, which is on the Hamilton line off Arbor Street, they're all neighbors that see each other's lawns and they compete to see who has the greenest lawn. Same with what I see happening at Settlers Lane. I mean, up at Spring Hill, is that they're going to be doing the same thing. Everybody wants to have the greenest lawn, and I think that's where we're going to be at.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, Dave, I have a question. So why don't we publish a list of
Peter, can I just ask you to identify yourself? for the
Peter
recording?
Clay,
I don't
Planning
know
Board.
If Catherine's here yet, so.
Peter Clay, Planning Board. Why don't we publish the list of the 30 or so properties that are way over the line, and just publish it?
So Peter, every year, Eric, obviously we have that data. So Eric does send letters out to those individuals depending on the year.
No, I'm talking about shaming.
I know, but
It's been brought up at selectmen meetings before.
right. We can,
And when I joined the board better than 10 years ago, there was a public relations firm, in quotes, that had written a letter that I think started with, "You have the dubious distinction of being one of the largest wasters of water in Wenham." And I had just joined the board. So I guess the answer is, at this time, we are taking a somewhat softer approach in terms of letters and other things. And we do not have an issue with exceeding our amount of water withdrawal. And it is a matter of fairness. So if this doesn't work with additional communications, we could consider something like that. But right now, we've not gone to a more adversarial approach, I'll say.
I wouldn't call it necessarily adversarial. I would call it just letting everybody know what the facts are. That's all.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it does speak to the whole conservation ethos. So, yeah, it's an option that we will continue to consider.
Last one from me, if I may, Dave Anderson, Planning Board. I'm a newer resident in town, but it felt like things this summer, and I'm recycling a little bit of what we've already said, but I just want to frame it in a way so I can really absorb it. It seemed like this year things were a little bit starker water-wise than it seemed like it had been before, with the lower levels in the Wenham Lake, which I realize is not us, but that's just kind of visible. The Ipswich River dropped pretty quickly when I tried to float down it with my family. And the water ban going in place May 1, I heard the selects at their meeting at some point express this amazement that it was earlier than ever. And yet I'm hearing a little bit from you all on a technical side saying, apart from June being 16 million gallons pumped, which was larger than we'd seen before in recollection, we didn't get close to the cap. And so I'm wondering if I'm understanding this correctly, and if we can understand the discrepancy, at least in my mind, between what seem like visible signs in a longer water ban and yet not necessarily as much of a alarm from you all right now, if that is framed correctly.
Well, I'll let Eric respond to that.
So every year is different. We have some years that water bans go into effect early June. Some that we've been able to hold off until July. It's all dependent on the Ipswich River flows. Part of what we did with the grant project that we work with was looking at the whole Ipswich River area and, reasons for why the Ipswich River goes dry. So I don't know. Since I've been here since 2008. And it's been up and down the whole time as far as when we put water bans into effect, when we don't, when the river goes dry, when it doesn't. It's amazing if you look at the Ipswich River and you watch the Ipswich River and you see when the trees start dropping their leaves, you'll notice the river will come up really fast. There's a million different things that contribute to that. so I can't contribute to any one thing. And this year, to me, yes, we used a little bit more in June, but we also had the Spring Hill development that came online, and they were putting down sod for erosion control. And they had talked to me about it because they were asked to put down sod. And I mean, I really had to work with them on letting them do some watering so they wouldn't lose the investment. So that definitely increased the June numbers. So,
Plus COVID, right? We were fearful.
well, we also, a lot more people at home this year. People were, I can't even tell you, I don't know what the number is, but I don't know how many people put in pools this year. But I saw the pool companies out everywhere this year. So I'm sure all that had something to do with it also.
Yeah, thank you, Eric.
Any other members of the board have questions for either the water commissioners or Eric? If not, I'm going to thank Ernest and Eric so much and Mark, thanks
And Mark, thank you.
yeah, Mark, thanks for sitting in, and
Glad to do it.
appreciate quite a lot your input. And I think we keep in touch with you, and
Happy to do
try to
it.
see if we can do a better job at communicating and making sure that if we get large developments, that they understand the need to be conserving, perhaps do irrigation wells, also on ordinances or bylaws if you're developing them and you need our support or assistance. I think we would be happy to work with you.
Okay,
great
thank you very much
discussion.
for having us.
Thank you.
Great discussion. I appreciate it.
Bye now.
All right, so the next item on our agenda is 60 Arbor Street. It's the continuation of the public hearing. I'm going to turn the gavel over to Mrs. Rogers to run the meeting, as I am in a butter. Put myself on mute, and Ms. Rogers, it's yours.
Mr. Rogers, before we get going, I am also in a butter. I'm going to recuse myself also.
Thank you. Well, this is the continuation of public hearing for 60 Arbor Street, the definitive subdivision. And in accordance with the regulations of the town of Wenham, we are still considering the petition of Jeffrey and Susan Hamilton, 60 Arbor Street, to approve a definitive subdivision plan for land located at 60 Arbor Street. Okay. It's been continued from October 8th. And in the time that since October 8th, a new plan, or I should say an amended plan, was presented to us and to the peer reviewer. And you have in front of you, or it did at some point, was that the agenda, or was that the plan, the most recent plan we got from the peer reviewer?
I'm sorry, Virginia. Virginia, I can bring up the recent plan that was submitted. We do have Mike Clark, our peer reviewer, here tonight.
Oh, good.
Mike did a review of the plan, and we sent that review to the applicant's engineer. We just got the response to that back the other day, and Mike has just had a chance to look at that today and responded to that. I do have copies of that, but I know the board has not had time to look at all of those documents yet. I can ask Mike to go over some of his comments, and then if you want from there, we can determine what the next steps will be. But do you want me to share the plan itself on the screen right now? Mike, do you want me to do that?
Yeah, I sent this afternoon that has everything in it, the old and the new.
And I do have that. Mike, I'm gonna make you, I think I can make you a,
I can share my screen.
yeah, I can do that. I need to make you the host so you can share your screen. So do you want to do that, Mike? You'll share your screen and you can go over
Yeah.
what comments you've made.
All right, give me a second here.
Thank you, Mike.
I am sitting in the kitchen, so, okay. So what has happened is, as Margaret informed us, we did a peer review, and then I didn't have, there was some confusion with the stormwater, so it wasn't done in the early November peer review, but it's included in this letter. And then Mr. Duclos responded to us in a letter, I guess last week or the week before. And I tried to include his responses and my responses to that in this letter. Unfortunately, there's a little, not confusion, but the Duclos letter really didn't tie a lot of stuff together. It's not, it was a little bit all over the place, but I think I was able to get through the questions. So one of the things that had happened is Margaret and I this morning were trying to prepare for the meeting, and there's some not confusion, but nuances with the lot size. And basically, the two requirements are for a piece not to be included in the lot size area calculation. It's either a wetland or it's narrower than 50 feet and has a perimeter greater than 150 feet. So in re-looking at that description and all the definitions, both in the zoning regulation and the subdivision regulation, it appears to me that while that the lots have enough square footage as is, okay?
Excuse
During
me,
the course of
Mike. I think it would be extremely good to have the map, to have the plan up
Let me
so that we can see the area that we're talking about. You and I have been looking at it forever. No, but
Yep, no
just a
problem.
reminder, okay? Thank you.
Expand this. I should have stayed in the office. Okay, so let me zoom in. So the area we were talking about is, and this is the plan I have here is what I did to do the calculations, okay? So you can see in this corner that it's, this area is less than 50 feet wide. But when you do the perimeter for this area, it's less than 150 feet. So that doesn't meet what is in the bylaw for definitions to remove this from the total lot area count. We've got a couple areas that would comply, would also be included, and they're all here. They're all basically less than 50 feet wide but the perimeter, of the sides is less than 150. And basically what I believe is it was written this way to stop real narrow lollipop lots. So any questions on that piece, first of all?
Are you talking about piece B?
Am I talking about what?
About the one that is marked B at this point in time? Or are you talking about
I was
the,
talking about the lot area calculation.
okay, so you're talking about what is called the smaller portion of lot 5?
Yeah, so it's follow my hand. So
Okay,
it's this area,
okay,
this area, there's an area in here,
right, okay.
an area here, and an area here. And so what happened was, this really hasn't come up before. And so I went back and looked at the definition, read Mr. Duclos' response and reevaluated it. And so that these areas, although they're, less than 50 feet wide, they have a perimeter around that, either around this triangle or around this odd shape with a curve that is less than 150 feet square, 150 linear feet. And so these areas, based on that, these areas can be used in the lot area calculation. And so let me go to that definition. When I look at the number, lot 6, which is what has the existing dwelling, is 40,009 square feet when you subtract the wetland area. So it's just above the threshold required by the dimensional requirements.
Excuse me, Virginia, could I just ask a question?
Surely.
Mike, when I looked at the plan, and I think I may have mentioned this to you, but I apologize if I didn't. But on sheet, I believe it's sheet C3, it shows lot 5 as having 48,000.
I haven't got to that yet. I pointed that out.
All right, I'm sorry. That was where I had gotten confused a little bit. It started at 48,292, and then goes down to 43. So I'm just confused about actual where we started and where we end up.
What we've asked Mr. Duclos to do is provide these calculations, so that we can see what they actually are.
This is Peter Clay, Planning Board. Just a process question.
Sure.
And this is actually for Virginia
Yes.
and Margaret. Should we wait until we have those answers so that we can actually discuss this fruitfully?
Which answers are you talking about?
Well, I think Mike just said that he's asked Mr. Duclos to go back and consider some stuff.
Yes, I think that it would be very useful. This will certainly be continued because we do not have all of those questions answered and agreed upon at this point in time. So I think that it would be useful to ask Mr. Clark if he would simply tell us what information he is still looking for from Mr. Duclos.
Yeah.
Got it.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
So that's really in the letter. There's a bunch of things that we looked in here. So there's, let me just go, because one of the things that has happened is that Mr. Duclos responded to us in writing, but his proposed modifications never made it to the drawings.
Right.
So I really can't recommend approval or not approval until we see what's on the drawings. So there's an area for that. If you look at this, this is a comment we had about the driveway. Mr. Duclos' response was that it was adequate. You know, as we normally do, I'm requesting a turning template for the emergency vehicles in the driveway so we can make sure it's safe. As we go through, for example, this erosion control, there's a slope that's 50%, which is rises 1 foot hard, 1 foot vertical for every foot horizontal. And, you know, a typical response is we'll provide slope stabilization for the 50% slope. Well, that doesn't really cut it. It needs to be on the drawings. There's some, you know, on the definitive plan, they're required to put in permanent granite monuments. That isn't shown on any of the drawings. You know, then there's some just little good housekeeping stuff. The grades in the profiles and cross sections are supposed to be labeled every 50 feet. And Mr. Duclos said he will do that. Again, on the tree and landscaping plan, you know, it's indicated that they'll show us what trees are coming down and what new plantings will be, but we don't have that information. There's some question on the water line. Typically what happens if there's an issue, not an issue, but an opinion, the water department will chime in with a letter, and we're looking to see on this proposal to run a service to the building and not run the water main all the way up to the property line, waiting for an opinion from the water department. And I'm just going through these. You know, the way I read the street signage, we're supposed to have a sign at the intersection that has, says it's a private way. Mr. Duclos disagrees with that. I just want to go to the drainage. I'm sorry, I just taking my time. Excuse me. Oh. I guess the biggest thing is on the drainage. It looks to me there needs to be some technical modifications to the stormwater system. They're not major, but questions that need to be answered. And then also, I would expect at this time that the planning board should be given a copy of what the housing, the homeowners association's agreements regarding the maintenance of the site and that type of thing. That should be provided for your review. But this letter basically summarizes everything. I don't see any major technical issues at that point. I think they've been pretty well hammered out with the dimensions and the lot area and that type of thing. But there's still some some of the detail needs to be put together and put on the drawings.
So this is Peter Clay, Planning Board. Sounds like they need to dot their i's and cross their t's.
Yeah, I mean, but just as an example, if when we were doing the check today, we determined that there's different areas for the lots on different drawings. So that's kind of really needs to be cleaned up. This is the paragraph I was looking for the stormwater. I went through the calculations. They appear to be adequate. It's just, again, some minor detail that needs to be provided and questions answered.
Peter Clay, Planning Board, Virginia. That's all I have to ask.
Thank you. I would like to ask Mr. DeCoulis if he would speak to this latest information that he received, his response, and are you willing to provide, or are you planning to provide the information that Mr. Clark has requested before we can make a decision? Are there any remaining difficulties about providing the information?
Good evening, Madam Chairwoman. Jim DeCoulos here, representing Susan and Jeff Hamilton. And I have no problems, and the Hamiltons don't have any problems addressing all of these issues. If I may just quickly go through some of the bigger topics, just take 2 minutes. The area calculations on C3 were not right. That was a last minute paper space error in AutoCAD that was just incorrect. The area calculations and numbers that you see on sheet C2 are what are accurate. And we'll provide traverse calculations to Michael and Margaret to affirm that.
I'm sorry, what are you talking about, C2 and C3?
So the set of drawings consists of 7 sheets.
Okay.
And on sheet C2, there's the full area of lots 5, 6, and 7. Lot 5 is shown as an area of 43,150 feet. Lot 6 has an area of 80,063 square feet. And lot 7 has an area of 728 square feet. Those are the accurate areas. The area discrepancy that Margaret and Michael saw this morning is on sheet C3. Those areas on sheet C3 are inaccurate. It was a administrative error that'll be repaired. The other major issues that were regarding the stormwater, I'm a little confused as to what Michael's asking for with 2 rows. And let's see, I think he asked for.
That's a technical thing, okay?
Yeah, Mike, and the other thing on the pop-up emitter, we can figure out. I'll show you where that is. Well, everything's going to be on the drawings. My comments were all intended to reflect that the changes were going to be shown on the drawings for submission to the board for your consideration and for your vote. So anything that I commented on will clearly be addressed in the drawings and in writing. The permanent monuments, the only question I have regards to that is that the rules and regulations do not require permanent monumentation at every lot corner and changes in the property line radius. As a matter of fact, there is a specific provision in the rules and regs that talks about them being at certain distances. So I just don't think it's necessary, nor has the board ever required permanent monuments at every lot corner. But again, that's an issue that we can address, Michael, Margaret, and I. The only other question I have for the board is, 2 other questions. Number one, in early September, we proposed eastern hemlock and American elm trees in the proposed landscape plan. I'd like to know if the board is comfortable with those species, or if you want me to go to the tree warden for commentary. But that's what we propose, and we'll propose again unless there's further comment or recommendations from the board. And as far as the water line goes, we'll get a recommendation from Eric in writing, asking him what he wants to do with an 8-inch water main, whether he wants that directly connected into the street main, or whether he's comfortable with just a 1-inch service from the street main all the way to the house. So we'll address all these comments, both in writing and on the drawings, and have those available for the next hearing. I just, again, just want to know on deadlines and, when you want the plans by, and, we'd be glad to address them in a timely manner for a particular deadline.
Virginia, if I could just speak to the deadline issue. We seem to be having a lot of problems getting the back and forth in time for the board's meetings. Like, we've gotten all this information today, and it's been too late. I would ask that we continue to the January meeting so that we have the rest of November, which Thanksgiving is next week, I think. And then, we're into the holiday season. The board's scheduled meeting is December 10th. And I just don't feel like we'll have enough time between now and then to actually make that happen, to get your revised plans and Mike's review again by the 10th. It's hard for me when they start to come in late, and I know it's not anyone's fault in particular, it's just the nature of it. Plus, I'm only here 2 days a week, so I'm not able to process everything as quickly as we need to, I think, right now, with all of the information that's been coming back and forth. Would anyone object to it going on to January's meeting?
Madam Chairwoman, I'd like to know what we could do, what would be an appropriate deadline to address for the next hearing on December 10th. We would prefer to get this matter resolved sooner than later. These are not significant changes that need to be made, and we feel as though we can address these, quite frankly, within a couple of days.
So this is Peter Clay, Planning Board. Why don't you commit to a date as to when you could submit all this stuff, and then right now, and then we'll let Margaret decide whether that's good enough.
Mike, are you available next week? I mean, if I can get these by Thursday, but next week is the holiday week, and I know
I'm off Wednesday and Thursday, but if Jim can, I think what we should do is if Jim can get the drawings to us, when do you?
Can you get them by Thursday this week, Jim? Today's Tuesday.
I think Friday the 20th would be more realistic.
Mike,
Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're kind of in and out, Mike. We're losing you.
All right.
There you go.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. Yep.
All right. So Jim, when do you think you can get the drawings over?
Friday the 20th, Mike.
Okay, so Margaret, so that makes the 21st, the 28th.
Well, that's the weekend.
So I'll deliver stuff on that Monday, November 30th.
30th or 23rd. If I get it on the 30th, Mike, and then if I can't get it, if there's anything wrong, I'm not going to be able to get Jim's response back in time for the board to get it. I need to send their packets to them with everything finalized by December 3rd. That's the Thursday before their meeting on the 10th.
Well,
that's why I hesitate to push anyone.
If we get the package on Friday.
This Friday.
I'll review it Monday. a week from yesterday.
Okay, the 23rd.
And before I issue a letter, I will call Jim and hash out these issues.
Okay.
And maybe
Make sure
Mark
all
will
the issues
be
are
on that
addressed.
phone call representing the town.
Okay, and then, so I should be able to have all of the information hashed out by December 1st, Tuesday. That way I'll have everything I need to send to the board for their meeting on, I want to send it to them on Thursday, December 3rd, so that they can have enough time to read through it and process it and have any questions that they need before their meeting on the 10th.
Yeah, I mean, that's the big question is for Jim. If, I would anticipate there'll be a little drafting after Monday. So are you able to get the final drawings the beginning of the week after Thanksgiving?
Yeah, absolutely, Mike.
No.
And I would like to add a comment here in that we still have not discussed anything that that the planning board sees on this that hasn't been covered by Mr. Clark. So before you make any commitments, you might ask members of the planning board if they have other things that they would like to discuss with you that would need to be included on the drawings as well.
Yeah, so I'm always being careful of public meeting regulations and laws. Everybody on the board has my email and I would think my phone number. And if you had any concerns, please give me a shout or send me a note. Probably the best way is an email to Margaret copying me.
Thank you very much. I think at this point, we do need to have some discussion of what we do have in front of us and any more questions that you haven't covered in your review, because this is much of this is new to us too. So in addition to your concerns, we may have concerns of our own. So I would like to ask a few questions myself for clarification on what I'm looking at, and to Mr. Takuas. And that I'm looking at a sheet called, I don't know the number of this sheet, but it has the,
Share that.
pardon?
I'll share the plan I have, Virginia.
It's the tree, it's with the tree legend, and it's so it's about the landscape plan. And honestly, I looked at this and I couldn't understand what it represents. Is this what is there, what is proposed? And there's some questions about the dimensions of the driveway and the road itself and the entry. So if I could ask those questions, I would like to. What does this represent?
The trees that you see on that sheet, Madam Chairwoman, sheet C5, which is identified in the lower right-hand corner, are existing trees. And earlier in September, we had a set that showed proposed trees. And what we'll do on the revised sheet here is we will show proposed trees. But these are all existing trees that are currently on the site within, I think it's the 20-foot front setback, which is what the rules and regulations require. What we're also showing on this sheet is the proposed 4-bedroom house. The cul-de-sac, the grade areas that you see are proposed pavement. The grade areas are proposed pavement. And as Michael had asked, he wants to know which trees are going to come down. So as you look carefully at the plan, for instance, you'll see on the left side of the cul-de-sac, there's a 16-inch Norway maple, there's an 18-inch black locust, but there's a really nice 18-inch yellow birch that would be really nice to save, quite frankly. And it's only a couple of feet off the edge of the proposed pavement, but it's a beautiful yellow birch. And you can see it there. It's about at the 10 o'clock position in the cul-de-sac. And we're really working, we're going to work hard to preserve that because it is a beautiful native species. So again, what we want to do is we want to propose an eastern hemlock and an American elm, one in the center of the cul-de-sac, and then another one off to the right at about the 1 o'clock position in the cul-de-sac. Does that answer your question?
Partially. It's so we see here the existing trees. I don't see any indication of which are going to be removed and which ones are going to stay. And of course, we would like to know what is this in the entire center of this cul-de-sac going to be just clear cut and then new things put in?
No, and as I said, that's what Michael asked for. He asked to know which trees are going to be removed. The twin 14-inch white pines in the center of the cul-de-sac will stay.
This needs to be on the drawing.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank you. I'm asking for that. Then the other question I have in terms of the landscaping plan, yes, we would request that you speak with the tree warden and get his suggestions as to what would be appropriate. Remember that one of the unusual things about this plan is that there is so much pavement so close to the abutters and to the street. And it, in order to make this somewhat more compliant with the look and feel of this neighborhood, we need to really be very concerned about the streetscape. And so this is not a minor issue about how much planting there is and how this is going to appear.
Madam Chairwoman, if I may respond to that.
Yes.
We don't agree that this amount of pavement is warranted either. We would prefer not to provide this much pavement, but this is what the Superior Court decision came down with, and this is what we feel as though we're being forced to present.
Yes, I understand that. Given that, I noticed that you, instead of 16-foot pavement around the cul-de-sac, you have presented 20 feet. And yet there's a 16-foot entryway. Could you tell me why there was 4 feet added to the paved area around the cul-de-sac?
So because a fire truck cannot turn in that radius on only a 16-foot wide pavement. It needs, in order for a fire truck to come in and turn around, they would need a full 20-foot wide pavement.
So the problem really is with the placement of the cul-de-sac, that it's too close to the street in order to provide the appropriate turnaround. Is that not so?
I don't understand your question.
That you haven't provided the appropriate radius from the street for a 40-foot radius.
No, a fire truck can easily come in to what you see before you on sheet C5. Mm-hmm. A fire truck can come into that cul-de-sac and make a full 360-degree turn inside that cul-de-sac. It's just that, and we'll show that. We'll provide turning templates as Michael had asked for, and we'll have there'll be a separate drawing. There'll be a separate drawing with turning templates showing how the trucks will come in and out. We'll be glad to show that on the drawings, and that'll be part of this next submission.
And that will that be given to the fire department for their acknowledgement that this is appropriate?
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
Chair, if I may interrupt real quick.
Sure.
One of the things that Ms. Hoffman and I discussed was creating that vegetated area in the cul-de-sac to address your exact concerns. So that's why, that's why it's shown this way. So again, we're juggling public safety and sustainability, and that's why this drawing, or why the cul-de-sac circle looks the way it does.
Well, all I'm saying is it's obviously it's an unusual kind of solution to the problem of fitting this house in this lot. And I think we need to have a little bit a more artful presentation of how this is going to impact the neighborhood. So given that, I'd like to ask if there's anyone else on the planning board who would like to ask questions.
This is Peter Clay, Planning Board. I'm good for now.
Thank you.
I guess the one comment is about the types of trees. I would definitely talk to the tree warden, please.
Mr. Anderson.
Yes, thank you. Dave Anderson, Planning Board. I think it's, as we just established, well, one question, Jim, if I could, the only waiver I'm hearing, and it's requested, it's not even necessarily going to be put on the plans, is for the sidewalks. Are there any other waivers that are being requested?
The only possibility, David, is for that water main.
Okay.
The 8-inch water main is a requirement, and that's the only other, that's the second possible waiver requirement. That would be it.
Okay, so, but obviously, for whatever reason, both of those were not, I don't want to say denied, but if it was, we were not up for those waivers on those two items, those would just be done according to the rules and regs. Am I getting that right?
Well, what we'll do is we're going to make formal requests for waivers of those two requirements. If the water commissioner believes that the 1-inch line, like I said, is appropriate, which he has told me it is, and I get that in writing, that'll be the second waiver request. But the first waiver request is for no sidewalks. And the sidewalks would just be additional impervious area that would be an additional demand on the watershed, or a reduction in infiltration to the watershed, which I don't think is a wise move to make, nor does it, I believe, aptly serve one residence. I just don't see it as a requirement, but this is something the board needs to discuss, is whether or not you want us to provide a sidewalk.
Okay, so I guess where I was really going with all of this is more a comment to Ms. Rogers, and that given the fact that this is angling toward essentially a by right plan, I think we want to make sure that we're hoping to put this to a vote at the next meeting. I want to make sure that there's ample opportunity, and I say opportunity because it's already happened, but for public comment. And I don't know if that should happen now, though it seems like we're getting pretty close. And I would say if we don't do it now, which I'm okay with, and I also acknowledge that there's been comment before, some of which has been in writing, I would highly encourage anybody else that wants to comment on this to put it in writing by, say, if the meeting's going to be the 10th, then the Tuesday or Monday before that, and send it to Margaret so that we can review that in advance of the meeting. This would be by no means to limit anybody's ability to comment at that continued hearing. But if it can be submitted in advance so that we can consider it in the lead up to the hearing, I would also encourage that. And that's if, Ms. Rogers, you don't want to have public comment now, which I could understand.
No, this is a public hearing. The public we'll be asked for comments
Okay.
as soon as we've answered the questions of the planning board.
Excuse me, Virginia, if the public wanted to send something that the planning board would be guaranteed to receive before the December 10th meeting, I would appreciate it by the 3rd. On the Thursday before, a week before the meeting is when I try to get everything together for you to send out to.
Yeah, but Margaret, Mark Liphart, 58 Arbor, there's no way anybody can make any comments by December 3rd if we haven't seen the final plans yet. There's no elevation plans, there's no final tree plan. So, I mean,
Sure, and I'm just saying that in order to get it into their packets, that Thursday before is appropriate, but you can
Right.
make comments at any time.
Right, but when are we going to see the final plans, right? I mean, Jim usually drops them the day before these meetings, so.
No, that's not true, Mark.
Excuse me, who is talking?
This is Ann Weeks, also in a butter. I was planning to try to submit something in writing tonight, and then the engineer's response came over the transom today, and I didn't have a chance to look at it because I work full time. So I'm agreeing with Mark that it would be helpful to have something to comment on. I mean, we can say general things, but specifically, it would be helpful to see the plans in order to provide public comment that's helpful.
Let me ask a question that I don't know the answer to, and that is, once the plans have been submitted to the planning board on the 3rd, is there any reason, Margaret, why any of the abutters cannot come in and view those plans?
Yeah, they certainly can. You know what I can do, Virginia? Once I get everything from Jim and from Mike, I'll post it on the town's website. I'll put it on the planning board page, which I often do when plans come in or things. I can put them on the planning board's website. So as soon as I get everything, I'll put it up on the website. And if anyone needs to contact me, certainly I can respond if they can't access that.
Hey, Margaret, this is Margaret. I'm sorry, Margaret. This is Jim. Do you mind doing that in iterations? Like, for instance, I'll be filing plans this Friday, the 20th.
Yeah.
Do you mind posting those plans on the 20th, and then
Sure.
after Mike's comments, and I get you a set of plans by like say December 2nd, or rather November 30th or December 1st. Post those up separately.
I can do it to the extent that I can work. I work 2 days a week, and I work Tuesdays and Thursdays. I'll often try to work on, if I need to and fill in, but if I get them on Friday, I have a certain number of hours that I can work each week. And when I go over those, I'm not supposed to go over those, but I will, if you get them to me Friday, I'll take some time and put them up. Yeah, I'll put up whatever you send me whenever I get it.
I would like to add my comment to this, Margaret, and that is that I do not want anything put up that is not in exactly the state that we will be discussing at the meeting. So as for iterations, we're almost there, we're partly there, that's not a consideration.
Okay.
So what will be put up is what we are going to be discussing at the final meeting. So this will potentially be the final draft.
So, Madam Chairwoman, then what I foresee is that the final set that would be presented to the board on December 10th would be a set that would be submitted to the board on December 1st. Does that sound fair to everyone?
Yes, I thought it was by the 3rd, I think was the agreement, right?
Well, yeah, but by the 3rd is when Margaret's asking for comments.
It's fine. Virginia, when I get your plan on the 20th, you'll send it to Mike and I. Mike will review it. Once I get Mike's review, if there are going to be changes, if you need to make changes after that, I'll wait for that next set, and then I'll post them once I get your changes. Virginia, is that okay with you if I wait for Mike's response? If Mike's response is, okay, all the changes are made, this is the plan that can be submitted to the board.
Yes,
And
that's
I'll
right.
post it at that point.
But you understand my concerns.
I do, sure, yep.
Okay, thank you.
That makes sense, Madam Chairwoman.
Will the abutters get some notice that we should be looking for plans on a specific date?
No, I'm sorry, Ann, I wouldn't be able to send anything out to abutters.
So we should just check the
Yeah.
website every day?
Website, and anybody who wants to can contact me via email, and I'll respond, as quickly as possible.
If Madam Chairwoman, if the abutters or anyone interested wants to provide their email addresses, I'd be glad to email or provide a link to them as soon as those final plans are submitted.
I can't see anything that would be more confusing to everybody. I think that we all need to be looking at the same thing at the same time. So I think that it's not helpful to have various iterations of various plans available to the world before we discuss them.
Yeah, that's not what I'm suggesting, Madam Chairwoman. I'm suggesting the final set.
They will come from us.
Yep, I'll post the final set, Jim. Once Mike gives me the go-ahead, I'll post it
Okay.
on the website.
So now, are there any other comments about that decision or anything that you've seen from the public?
Peter Clay, Planning Board.
Yes,
Can
sir.
I seek a question or a clarification on that sidewalk issue? So if I'm walking down Arbor Street from Porter, there's a sidewalk, right?
Is there something on Arbor Street? I don't know.
No, I think there is.
Yeah, Peter, there is. Yep.
And then when you cross over into Hamilton, there is definitely a sidewalk.
Yes.
So are you suggesting that there be a gap of sidewalk along the front of 60 Arbor Street?
Absolutely not. There will be a continuation of that existing sidewalk.
Okay, great. Thank you. So, okay, so in the plans that we're looking at, is that sidewalk correctly counted in terms of the lot area?
It has nothing to do with the lot area, Peter. It's just a matter of whether the board wants a sidewalk within the proposed right-of-way.
Oh, around the circle?
Yes.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Anyone from the public with comments or questions?
This is Ann Weeks, 11 Foster Street. As I said, I didn't have time to do a lot with what was submitted in the last couple days, but I did want to note for the board that there are certain sections of the subdivision rules that require preliminary and definitive plans to show all large trees, wooded areas, ridges, etc., and identify the area of clearing, backfilling, cutting of natural vegetation, and that be minimized. All reasonable care is supposed to be taken to preserve existing trees, and there shouldn't be any clear stripping without a special permit or grading of, deeper than 5 feet or moving more than 5 feet of contour without a special permit. So I just wonder, there hasn't been any conversation about the areas of the property that have large old trees on it, other than in and around the street. But I think that's a limited view of what the subdivision ordinance actually has to say about that. And I'm wondering if there's any indication that the plan will provide that the existing trees on the ridge area will remain, and that area will not be removed or stripped. Thanks. I'll put all that in writing too. I just haven't had time.
Thank you.
Madam Chairwoman, may I respond to Ms. Weeks' comments?
Yes, certainly.
So the tree plan requirements in the rules and regulations are at section 3.3.3.19. And they require that all trees over 12 inches in diameter measured 4 feet above the finished ground level within the minimum front setback distance be shown. And that's
Yes, I'm aware. I'm actually referring to subdivision section 3.2.1.2.9 and 3.3.3.6. Also subdivision section 4.5 and subdivision section 5.10.5 and the zoning law bylaw section 9.3 sub 3 and section 10.1.2. Thanks. I'll put that in writing.
We're providing a tree plan as the rules and regs require, Madam Chairwoman, and I'd be glad to respond to Ms. Weeks' comments when they come in. Thank you.
I'm Mary Ann Cannon,
Yes.
abutter 13 Foster Street. Two things. Did I hear Mr. Clark say something about a lollipop lot, or did I mishear that?
That was in discussion. There's no lollipop lot proposed.
What is a lollipop lot, sir?
It's a lot that has a real narrow area, 50 feet, and it extends up and has the big area up top, and it kind of looks like a lollipop. It's something that the way the bylaw is written, it is discouraging. So,
Okay. So those are not there.
The question is, it's what we call a hammerhead lot, and there are special zoning regulations about it. And that is if if the lot has, I believe, 120,000 square feet. Am I right about that? Then it can have a minimum frontage of 40. I'm getting this wrong, but it has minimum frontage. So, yeah. But this lot does not meet those requirements because it is not, the lot size is not large enough.
All right. So there was discussion of hammerhead lot at the last meeting that I attended, but in fact, that's no longer viable.
It never was. It never was. It didn't meet the conditions.
The other thing is, I just wanted to support Ms. Weeks. I'm very concerned about the ridge. And I would like to see that in writing. I think there's way too much gray here as in a butter. So thank you very much.
I'm sorry, way too much.
Gray area. It's not black or white. It's not definitive. I think Virginia, you meant something like that.
I meant on the map there was too much paved area.
No. With what we're talking about, it's just not very clear.
Right.
Thank you.
How much disturbance there is going to be on the rest of the property.
And the other questions you've had earlier, but certainly the rest of the property. Yes.
So
thank you.
I would appreciate getting a copy of anything that you might, well, I guess, will you be sending it to the planning board?
Are you talking to me?
I'm talking to you and to Ms. Weeks.
I'll submit a letter, I think, through Margaret, as I have in the past.
So
I've sent letters to Margaret too, and she's been very responsive. I can work with Ms. Weeks on that.
And good, just make sure that you ask Margaret to pass them along to me.
Okay, thank you very much.
Any more questions, comments? And then I would entertain a motion that we continue the hearing until date certain, 7:30 at December 10th, Thursday, December 10th.
Dave Anderson, Planning Board, also move.
Thank you. And do we have a second? Mr. Clay? Yes, well,
Second, Peter Clay.
thank you very much. And then are there any votes against? Votes for? Mr. Anderson?
Aye.
Anderson, aye.
And Rogers? Aye. And Mr. Clay, did you?
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And I will turn the meeting back to Ms. Weeks.
Great. Thank you very much, everyone. Good night.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night. Good night.
Good night. Thank you for being there. Okay. The next items on the agenda for this evening are administrative. I think, Margaret, you would like to give us an update on the planning grant that we've applied for in the regulation update project that we were discussing a little bit earlier.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to give a quick update. I'll stop sharing just so there's more, you can see everybody. Just wanted to let you know, we did receive a grant from the Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs for a planning grant. We had applied for it to get some funds to help with the updates to the regulations. You know, we've been trying to get the subdivision rules and regulations updated for some time. So the grant is for $18,000. It's a 2-year grant. So we're going to start with 10 and then we'll get the other 8 second half. I'm putting together a scope of services to send out. Because it's less than $50,000, we only have to send it out to 3 prospective contractors, and we can go with the lowest bidder. But so I'm looking forward to getting this process started, and the planning board will be one of the main drivers of this project. We're hoping to create a core committee from the planning board, hopefully a ZBA. I'd like to bring a ZBA member on board, but from the different departments, as we discussed earlier, the water department certainly. The focus of this regulation update is primarily to just make sure that all of our regulations are updated to current practices, current best practices, as well as sustainability. We want to make sure that we're moving forward in a way that's, we can have development that's sustainable and addresses some of the climate change issues that we're facing now, but also to make sure that all of our regulations are cohesive, that everything kind of jives. I think some of you may have witnessed the discrepancies between planning, subdivision regulations and zoning bylaws, general bylaws, water resource protection bylaws. We're looking at MS4 permitting bylaws that we have to update. So I think it's going to be a very comprehensive look at everything, and I'm really excited to get started. So I just wanted to let you know you're going to be pulled into service. So get your Zoom.
Do you have a timing on when the money flows and when you start working?
Yeah, the money's available already. The $10,000. We've signed the contract with the state, and so the money's pretty much available as of, I think it was Friday. And so I just need to get the scope of services complete. I'm planning on sending that out next week to the three companies. Finally.
Okay. And then the next item, if there's no conversation about that amongst the board members, the next item is the meeting minutes from October the 8th, which I confess I have not seen. But I'm sure that's just because I've been like crazy busy.
Has everybody seen them? Did you all get them?
Can you share your screen? I haven't had a chance to look at them. I'm really sorry.
I didn't.
You're muted, Margaret.
I am muted. I have to drop them from one computer to the other, and I think I didn't put it in my,
I have, Margaret, I have them up if you.
Do you have them up? You know what, David, let me make you a host. Do you mind pulling them up?
I don't mind.
Great, thank you.
We'll have to read them fast.
I did look at them. I didn't really have any edits.
That's
Counting on Dan.
That's it then.
Can I just ask a question? Who is the person who's listed as resident? I'm looking at the gallery view.
Mhm.
There's us,
Oh,
Margaret,
yeah,
Catherine, and then there's somebody that's called resident.
as an
We don't-
undersea
we don't
creature.
know. I don't know if anyone
You
is.
identify yourself if you are actually there.
I don't think I have the ability to unmute or anything, so. I don't know whether somebody just had an extra screen. Occasionally that does happen.
It's very bizarre.
They're on frequently, different meetings.
I've just asked the person privately in the chat to identify themselves.
David, are you able to share your screen? Is it working?
I may be able to. I have to change my computer configuration. Just give me a sec here. Let's see if this works. Oh, I'm gonna have to quit and reopen. I don't think we want to do that. I'm sorry.
Okay, all right. No, that's okay. Let me see if I can grab them. Did everyone get them in their packets from before? I don't know if everyone did.
I did.
Did you? Okay.
Yes.
I'm sure I did. I just haven't had a chance to do anything with them.
All right.
I don't have any response from whoever this Zoom bombing resident is.
Yeah, there may be nobody there. Sometimes people just leave their screen on. I'm gonna grab.
Presumably they're a resident of Wenham.
Give me just 2 minutes. I go between my work laptop through Splashtop it's called. And it's sometimes but I can't do Zoom on it because it.
Let me see if I can pull them up.
There we go. Okay, and I'm gonna grab them now.
Anne, could we put them off until next month?
That would be fine with me. I was looking for them on my email. Hold on one second. Let me pull you back up. I was just
Virginia,
scrolling through my email trying to
that
find
is
them.
Virginia, that is a capital idea.
I would take a motion to defer the minutes from October 8th until the December, whatever it is, 10th meeting.
So moved.
All right.
I think I have Peter Clay seconding.
Yes.
All in favor? Is there anyone objecting?
Anderson, I.
Weeks, aye. Pascarello?
Aye.
No, you've put in the effort already.
Peter Clay's aye.
Aye. And
Roger.
Virginia Rogers,
Aye.
yes.
I just don't want to discuss the minutes in front of this phantom who's from beneath the sea.
I see. Yes, and the person has not identified themselves.
Margaret, you can take someone out of the
SpongeBob.
meeting if they don't identify themselves.
SpongeBob.
How do I do that? It doesn't give me much
You
option.
put them back in the waiting room.
Penalty
I don't have
box.
the ability to do anything with them. I
There
can
you
chat
go.
with them, but that's all.
I think they left.
That's so spooky.
You didn't do that?
No, I didn't. I was still the host.
Oh, you're the host.
Oh,
Oh, okay. All right.
Gotta go,
thank
David.
you, David.
They've had a lot of
So
meetings.
I would like to speak. I would like to speak to that for just a minute.
Can I make myself host again?
I'm sorry, Mrs. Rogers has a question?
No, I just have a comment to make that anyone can attend our meetings. They're public meetings
Yes. They do need to identify themselves, though, for the record.
if they want to speak.
Ah,
I
So,
think on a Zoom meeting, they're supposed to identify themselves, period.
well, but, and then we record the meetings and these recordings are available. to anyone, right?
Right.
Correct.
So I think it's inappropriate to eject someone from the meeting because they won't identify themselves. That's just my comment.
I guess we'll have to go to the
I don't want to get
the Zoom rules. And
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know, given that Zoom is vulnerable to people just dropping in, you know, it's fine. I don't think we have anything amongst ourselves to say that anyone who lives in Wenham or Hamilton or Mars really couldn't hear.
Yeah, and I think typically.
On the other hand, I think lurking in a meeting and not identifying yourself is also problematic. So there's a fine line there. Anyway, the person did not identify themselves to me.
I think
The person is now gone.
they can rejoin. They can rejoin and come back in if they want to. I don't think it's a permanent.
I think typically we wouldn't eject someone from a meeting unless there seemed to be some inappropriate behavior. But if you think about a regular meeting, someone could sit in the back of the room and not be identified.
exactly.
But
That's certainly true.
yeah. So I mean, unless there was something they were doing, they were Zoom bombing or something.
Right.
It was the aquarium screensaver that bothered Peter.
A little something fishy about that.
Yeah. Very good, Margaret.
There you go.
Do we have any other matters? I mean, I think it would be useful to know, actually, whether or not there were any rules about keeping people in, and I would prefer to err on the side of leaving people in.
I'm sure.
But I don't know what the Zoom rules are.
So I'm more than happy to chase that down. I'm going to start. First stop is going to be Diane Bucco.
There you go.
Wouldn't
I just know that the first item on our agenda is always the meeting is being recorded. Please identify all attendees.
So can I raise a matter that as may not have been reasonably anticipated, just for discussion purposes, since we're in this window? It'll be very
Absolutely.
quick. So we've
Go
talked
for it.
about this before, about having a submission deadline for materials in advance of our meetings. I think that's something that we need to address. I don't think that getting materials a day or two ahead of a meeting is sufficient time for us to deliberate or consider anything.
Agreed.
I agree.
I'm not sure how we go about doing it, whether we have to adopt a planning board rule or something, but
we certainly do have regulations that address the need for submissions. It doesn't give us specific deadlines, but I've told the applicants I need these things a week before your meeting. I want everything in place a week before your meeting to send out. I very rarely get that.
Absent some sort of requirement, I'm not sure you're going to.
I know.
I think that might be Dan's point. I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I wonder if we need to write an amendment to our rules and regs.
Yeah.
and then if something comes in late, it doesn't get distributed to the board.
I wonder if I wonder if we could get around it by just saying, if it isn't received by this date, it'll automatically be continued. There's very little prejudice to that. It's on the record and its notice is given, and it's just a vote. We just continue.
The only issue with that is that there are certain constructive approval deadlines that we have to be careful about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Not considered as the other thing you were thinking, Dan?
I missed the beginning of that.
Sorry. So then the other point you were making is, let's say we can't automatically continue, or we can't just continue the hearing. The other penalty, so to speak, is that it just isn't, or effect is that it's not considered by the board.
Yeah. So I know there are other boards around that if you're late in submitting, they just do not distribute the materials. I think the ZBA up in Gloucester is one of those where they'll say, sorry, you get it in too late. It doesn't get in the packets. So in a situation like that, the applicant, if they really want something considered, is going to request a continuance.
Yeah, and I think in our regulations, it actually says that the documents need to be presented to the planning board at the planning board meeting. And I mean, that doesn't make a lot of sense to me because you don't have time, you know, if you get something that night, you can't really discuss it. You haven't had a chance to read it. You don't know what it is. So I think if something does come in that late, then we just say, thank you, we've gotten it. We'll take it under advisement and we have to continue this hearing until we have a chance to read through it. So, but again.
So I'm sorry, Margaret, are you suggesting that we don't need to amend our rules and regs to just add a filing deadline?
I'm not sure that we really can add a deadline to rules and regulations. We can, though, tell an applicant, we have to review your information, and if you give it to us the day before, we don't have time to review it. You can give it to us. The board can have the hearing. We can take in your information. We don't have to discuss it. We don't have to act on it. We just have to say, we have your information, but we'll continue the hearing.
So can I propose this, Margaret, which is if we did want to have a regulation like this, could you just look in to see what the mechanism would be for us, if it's even possible for us to do this?
Yep. Yes, I certainly will. Okay. And actually, that can be.
It would appear that it needs to be an amendment to section 6 of our rules and regs, because there it's pretty clear that the applicant can submit, as you were saying, material all the way up until the end of his presentation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. This, in particular, when we're working with a peer reviewer, we have a deadline for the applicant to get their, revisions in or whatever. Say they send the revisions to the peer reviewer, then I have to wait for the peer reviewer to get back to me. And quite often they can't get back. They can't turn it around in a day or two. So that's why even, as an example, the recent case where, we need to have the meeting on December 10th, but yet I've got Thanksgiving week. People aren't always in. My limited hours. I mean, we do have some things that are difficult to make things happen fast. Things don't happen fast.
Right, and I think that being the case, we probably need to be firmer about deadlines so that, I mean, the other thing that I would observe is these hearings go on and on and on, and a lot of times it's because they haven't really gotten it together in enough time before the meeting to be able to get through the process. And if we were a little bit more straightforward about what those deadlines are, and I think we're trying to be, maybe that would be actually helpful for everyone.
Yeah, I think so. I agree.
And Margaret, there's nothing that prevents an applicant from submitting alternative plans, right?
No.
Okay.
There's nothing that prevents that. Sure.
Because that would, I mean, if somebody, hypothetically came before the board with a by right plan and said, but we would prefer to do X instead because it's less pavement or whatever it is. I mean, there's nothing preventing them from coming to us with both proposals at the same time with all information filled out.
No, typically if it's something, if it was a subdivision application versus a special permit application, a subdivision application, quite often someone will submit an as-right plan and then along with it submit what they, an alternative plan. On a special permit, typically, they submit what follows the regulation and what what they can do with the special permit, not by right. But with a subdivision, quite often you will get, like I said, a by right plan, and typically that is how it works. You get the by right plan, and then you you whittle it down. They to ask for the list of waivers of things they want. But yeah, you could submit an alternative plan. It's not two separate applications, though. Not on the same site. It would typically come together.
I wonder,
Go ahead, Peter, sorry.
I mean, this has been a good discussion, but I'm wondering if we have a motion to end the meeting.
Adjourn.
Well, I was going to see if anyone else on the board had any comments about this idea. And if there are none, then I would ask for such a motion. Are
So
you
moved.
making that? Okay. And Mr. Clay, are you going to second?
I second. Peter Clay seconds. No, that was a good discussion, Dan. I just kept going.
I have to say I appreciated it. I'm going to vote since I have my mic open. Weeks says aye.
Peter Clay says aye.
Roger says aye.
Oscarello, aye.
Anderson, you're on
Yes.
mute, but I can see you waving.
And that was a motion to adjourn, correct?
Correct.
Okay. All right.
Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you. I'll
Good
be in
night,
Good
all.
touch
meeting. Good night, all.
next week. Good night.